IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm so sorry. My thing was running a little bit slow, and I did not know if I was streaming live or not. So here we are, Irish Breakdown Podcast, coming at you with a Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on a fabulous Friday. Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at IrishBreakdown.com, with my guy, Sean Davis, co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast, as well as a recruiting analyst here at IrishBreakdown.com. Folks, we have a very jam-packed show for you all. I know people were throwing in a bunch of mailbag questions before the show even started. We are only going to be taking super chats today. So if there is a question that you have that you would like answered on today's show, super chats are the way to do that, because we're going to talk a lot about the impending decision of Anthony Sacca, star 2025 linebacker out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We'll be talking about that and what it would mean for Notre Dame if they're able to pull it off on Saturday, as well as who are the main competition, where things stand. We'll be breaking down the Anthony Sacca pending decision there. We'll also, Sean, be recapping some visitors this past week that took unofficial visits to the University of Notre Dame, some early 2026 names there to know. We'll also be previewing some more players that are going to be coming on Wednesday, April 3rd. That's going to be one big day for Notre Dame in the 2026 class. So we'll be breaking that down. And then we have an extra interview for you all, because me and Sean did an interview about a week and a half ago, I guess. It's just been kind of in the archives waiting to be dropped. We're going to give you insight into one of the top overall players in the 2026 class for Notre Dame early on in the class. So, Sean, first and foremost, sir, as I always try to do before we jump into the madness and the chaos that is the recruiting landscape, how are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing today?
Man, it's been a couple days, man. It's been a couple of days, a little bit of sickness working around, a little bit of exhaustion turning around, but never stop here, man. Recruiting world doesn't stop for my sickness and my illness, to say the least.
Absolutely, man. Happy Good Friday to everyone out there. Hope you enjoy yourselves and have a great Easter weekend. Good
Yep.
chocolate, good candy to all your kids. If they have to do speeches at church and school, hope they do well. But yeah, I'm feeling good, man. It's a beautiful day here in the Windy City. Not a lot of wind, more sun. Hey, life is good.
Yep.
Every now and then I just dealt with a little bug last week.
Yeah.
So I understand, my brother.
Yeah, man. It's just, there's just always something going around here, Sean. Like, it just seems like, right? Like, luckily, the lucky part would be if only one kid gets it, right? But then
Yeah.
usually two kids get it. Usually a father gets it. Usually a mother gets it. And before you know it, the whole household is overrun with germs and bacteria. That's just kind of the world that we live in as parents. But we're chugging along. And I would like to make a correction in the chat real quick, Sean. Would like to make a correction, because there's already a debate happening in this chat about whether Anthony Sacca, 2025 Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, St. Joe's Prep linebacker defender, is a Pennsylvania guy or a New Jersey guy, Sean. Tell the
Oh
people
boy.
who he is. Tell the people where he's from, Sean. Tell the people where he truly lies, what his allegiance is. Tell
You're
them.
gonna make me say it.
Oh, say it, buddy. Say it.
Yeah, he's a Jersey guy.
He's a Jersey
He's
guy,
a Jersey
man.
guy.
He's from Delran, New Jersey, goes to school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but the family is from Delran. So, yes, if Notre Dame lands Anthony Sacca on Saturday, which is going to be announced by him via Twitter, we do not have an exact time of when the decision will be announced. But if Notre Dame does land Anthony Sacca, they're getting a New Jersey guy, folks. I don't want to hear about the Philadelphia stuff, okay? He is a Jersey guy. So just want to throw that out there. Not from Pennsylvania. He goes to high school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but he is from over the bridge in the state in South Jersey. So it would be a landing of a New Jersey guy. But Sean, let's talk about this one. So Anthony Sacca had dropped some knowledge, right, that he is going to be committing on Saturday between finalists: Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke. To open up the conversation, I want to talk about what the latest is between Anthony and each one of these schools.
Mhm.
And then we'll talk about if Notre Dame is able to land Anthony, 6'3", 225-pound linebacker, by the way. They could play Rover, Will. He's kind of a moving chess piece. Notre Dame has been selling him, Sean, this kind of combo backer outlook, right? Like this is kind of what you are. You can move around and you could wear a bunch of different hats for us potentially. But regardless, let us talk about where things are with Notre Dame to start out with. And then we'll talk about the impact of everybody else and then what it would mean for Notre Dame if they're able to land Anthony Sacca. Sean, the first conversation we have to talk about, and for people that are unfamiliar with this one, most people are at this point if they've listened to this channel, Anthony Sacca has a very distinct tie to Notre Dame. Okay, very distinct. And it would be his future defensive coordinator if he comes to the Irish. Because for people that don't know, Sean, Al Golden played with Tony Sacca, Anthony's father, at Penn State. So they've known each other's families, obviously, for a very long time. That's the starting point of what Notre Dame has been able to develop this great relationship, is that they obviously had a little bit of foot in the door, knowing that Al Golden has a history with the Sacca family.
Mm-hmm. It is one of those things that you felt like during the recruitment and still feel like gives Notre Dame a really good shot at landing the services of Anthony Sacca, is that connection with Al Golden, his father. And Al Golden, who has been critiqued in the recruiting circles and amongst Notre Dame fans, you have to give him credit, right? Because he was very involved with a couple of linebacker recruits in the last cycle in 24. And here we are, his relationship with Tony Sacca, once again, possibly being a huge factor in the recruitment of Anthony Sacca. And then there are also, some other connections that we could end up finding out about later on down the line after he makes his announcement. But look, you have to love, because of that connection, I think both of us thought early on Penn State might actually be the team to beat.
I thought this was a Penn State Notre Dame battle. Not even pretty early on. About, what was it, a month and a half ago when he dropped his top 5 and Penn State was not included in that? Like, that was shocking to me, obviously. So yeah, it was shocking. I think another big sell, Sean, and we've talked about this before, is that when you're talking about the Notre Dame staff of selling to a linebacker, we can talk about Al Golden, who has a history of being a really good linebacker coach. Obviously coached the Cincinnati Bengals to a Super Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah.
But also Marcus Freeman, pretty good linebacker background, if I do say so myself. Max Bulla, who I know we're both high on as the current linebacker coach at University of Notre Dame. You got a lot of linebacker minds on there, right? If any program, I think, can get the most out of a linebacker just from a knowledge perspective, giving them that type of knowledge, you have to think Notre Dame is up there with just about anybody, you would think.
You would think so.
Yeah.
And, with his recruitment, along with the rest of the guys that are on the board, it's very interesting that we're starting to see the pitch that Notre Dame can make. In my opinion, early on, I think Marcus Freeman was just going after, I don't want to say it like that. I think they had a plan immediately to get longer and athletic.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as they start to add, and they get into the 24, 25, and the 26 classes coming up this summer, I think what you're starting to see Notre Dame as a staff do is be more specific in the linebacker recruiting. Instead of just identifying, okay, these are guys that are longer and athletic. Now we can go next step, right? Not just long athletic, but who really fits? Who can we really see fitting into what Al Golden is asking our linebackers to do? Which, I think Brian and I discussed this on the show Wednesday, Brian. Okay. And we were just talking about how the recruiting is changing now as you go into his 3rd class and his 4th class, because you're trying to build up depth, right? You're like, yo, numbers are low. We're trying to build up depth. We're trying to improve the overall roster talent. And then you get to a point where you feel like, okay, we've done that. Now, what we've seen in the 26 offers. The 26 offers are totally different than the early 25 and 24 offers. They were more audacious. They were more aggressive when it comes to top 100, top 50 players than they were previously. And that's because they built the foundation and they built the floor for the program and recruiting. And now they can be more specific and more audacious about the guys that they go after. And that linebacker position, in my opinion, we're starting to see that even more in the 25 class as it plays out, and even bigger in the 26 class.
And so we have some clarification that I want to give real quick because apparently it just dropped on Twitter, Sean. Just kind of a little bit of news about Anthony Sacca is that Anthony Sacca will be announcing live on whose YouTube channel? It is he's going to be on the Rivals YouTube channel tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern time. We did know the time, but we didn't want to put it out in the universe in case Anthony didn't want it out there. But 2:00 will be the time that he is announcing tomorrow. Again, choosing between Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke. Sean, let's talk about who I think has a very interesting pitch to Anthony Sacca outside of Notre Dame is Ohio State. Very interesting one because not only linebacker has taken a big uptick the last couple of years under Jim Knowles. You see what he did with Tommy Eichenberg, what he did with Steel Chambers, and Ohio State always recruits that position very well. I also would say that the relationships are a big thing. For people that don't know, defensive coordinator Jim Knowles is actually a St. Joe's Prep alumni. So the same high school that Anthony Sacca goes to is where Jim Knowles went to high school. That's one. The other one is who's the current linebacker coach at Ohio State, Sean?
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, James Laurinaitis, who obviously spent a year as the graduate assistant linebacker coach for Notre Dame. So clearly he has a relationship with Anthony as well. So two relationships that matter there. And I'll be honest, Sean. I'll be honest. So I would like to play linebacker in a Jim Knowles defense. I'll be honest. I would love to. I would love to be in a Jim Knowles defense. It's a good selling point, is my point. You're a premier program. You have good linebacker play. Jim Knowles is a great defensive coordinator. You have relationships with Coach Knowles, who has Philadelphia ties, as well as James Laurinaitis, who has a previous relationship with him while he was at Notre Dame. So those things, I think, all make it a pretty interesting one.
Should be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing the news. And if Notre Dame can land its services, you get a thumbs up from me. Get a thumbs up from me. The evaluation, the guys that they're going after, in your opinion.
Yep.
Does this have more? Because Sacca, we definitely can attribute his recruitment in a way or in several ways to Al Golden.
Mm-hmm.
But the recruiting, from what we're hearing at the linebacker position, even going back to a little bit of last year when Max Bullock was a GA.
Yeah.
How much do you think his influence has started to come over into the 25 offers and the kids they're going after currently? And the evaluation, I would say.
Yeah, we saw a couple linebackers added to the board. I feel like, I think of like a guy, Antoine Delorier, that was offered a couple of months ago, Sean. Like, I think that Max Bullock obviously had a big point in that one, a big say in that one. There's no doubt. I think the biggest impact we'll see though is 2026. Like those linebackers are Coach Bullock's guys at that point. And I'm sure that Marcus Freeman, Al Gold, I'm sure they all kind of have a say in who the linebackers are on the board because obviously they have a differing reasons for their wants at that position. But yeah, I think that you could definitely make that assumption that because it's a clearer picture now, right? Regardless of if this board was created fully by Max Bullock or not, he is the driving force to, I want that guy, right? Like that's a guy that I want to coach, that he can be great for the next level for Notre Dame football. And again, announcement 2:00 Eastern time tomorrow, live on the Rivals YouTube channel is when Anthony Sacca will be making a decision. If he selects Notre Dame, Irish Breakdown will be going live shortly after the fact. So make sure you have your notification bell. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. You'll know when a pending show may come up. Okay. So that's number 2, Sean, Ohio State. Let's go Alabama. I did a commitment preview on irishbreakdown.com. People should go look at that, by the way, because I highlighted all of these teams, Sean. Alabama, I kept it very simply, right? This is very simple. Anytime Alabama's involved, they're a threat.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I'll say about it, right? Is he went down. So Anthony visited Alabama in early February, right? And after that visit, he was head over heels almost is how I would put it, right? Like he was
Mm-hmm.
very complimentary of Alabama, was mentioning them all the time, was saying a lot of great things about him. So I think they made a huge impact on him, obviously. And at the end of the day, whether it's Nick Saban or Kalen DeBoer in 2024, right? Which obviously we know it's Kalen DeBoer, but whoever the coach is, it's Alabama, right?
Yeah,
Like it's how many national championships the last 15, 20 years? Like it's wild how successful they've been as a defensive player, as a linebacker. You look at the history over the last 15 years, talk about the Reuben Fosters and the CJ Mosleys and Rashawn Evans and a lot of great linebackers that have gone on to be pretty successful in the NFL. And it's Alabama. And anytime Alabama's involved, they are a threat, in my opinion.
of course. And as Notre Dame fans, Ohio State fans, you feel a little bit better knowing it's not Nick Saban trying to close the deal. But like you said, the brand itself and look, Kalen DeBoer and his record speaks for itself. So a
Yep.
lot of people think that the program might take a small step back, but the Alabama brand in the college football recruiting world is still very formidable. So that just speaks to the level of the play and respect that big time programs have for a kid like
Yep.
Anthony Sacca. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we had someone ask, what kind of comp does he play, Sean? He plays the best comp. I mean, literally, he played a game against IMG Academy last year, which it was IMG's only close game of the season. They narrowly lost. Otherwise, they won every other game, St. Joe's Prep, and were state champions. So they play very good teams in the state of Pennsylvania, in the Philadelphia area, but they even played IMG this past year. So they play a lot of great teams. They play a lot of great football teams. There's no doubt. And so Alabama, obviously always going to be a threat. The other two interesting ones, Sean, we won't spend as much time on it. I would say Duke is a really interesting one because of his relationship with Manny Diaz, right?
Mm-hmm.
The minute you saw Penn State wasn't on the list and you're like, Duke's on the list, your mind kind of goes to, why would that be? But then you kind of paint some picture of he must just really love Manny Diaz. That must be part of it, right? Like that
Yeah.
previous relationship probably matters a lot to him.
Yeah, Manny Diaz is a very aggressive. Once again, you talked about aggression in a defense that might be appealing to a young man like Anthony Sacca. And Manny Diaz has always been known as a very aggressive defensive coordinator. And so the appeal to be under his tutelage at Duke definitely is there.
Yeah. And then the other one, Sean, which we're not going to spend a ton of time on because I would just like to say this. More and more 2025 kids, I would say, have been mentioning Wisconsin a lot more than what I had typically heard in the 2023 and 2024 class. You're hearing Wisconsin's name a lot more. So, full transparency, don't think Wisconsin is a threat in this one, in the final decision. But I think it's a kind of, and this is going to sound like a slight shade, I guess, but I think this is a slight hat tip to Luke Fickell and his staff that like they're getting in these conversations a whole lot more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're at least in the conversation, which is more than they have been 2023, 2024, 2025. You're starting to hear Wisconsin's name a lot more, which I think is very good for the future of their program.
Luke Fickell, in my opinion, had a very similar challenge facing him that Marcus Freeman had when he took over at Notre Dame. It's like, because Wisconsin football is respected. He's coming in there trying to raise the level. And I think Notre Dame football was respected, but had kind of leveled off under Brian Kelly. And Marcus Freeman came in knowing that there were certain things he had to do to kind of raise the level to get to that true national championship contender level. Not just making the playoffs every now and then, but to be a consistent contender. He knew there was a step. So now you have two former Ohio State linebackers taking jobs with the same challenge in front of them. And like you said, we're starting to see Notre Dame in races with Georgia, Alabama, the big dogs, and winning some of those, right? And then you're starting to see Wisconsin. They haven't won many of those, but you're starting to see them mentioned with a lot of top 100 kids are being mentioned in their top fives. So it's very similar, to, what Marcus Freeman had to do coming up from under Luke Fickell when he came to Notre Dame. But both of them facing similar challenges. I can't call it apples to apples because I would never compare Notre Dame to Wisconsin. But it's the same challenge. It seems like Luke Fickell he's putting in that work, man. He's definitely putting in that work.
Yeah. No, he really is. And I think that that's going to be a big key for Wisconsin, Sean, is I think my main, I don't know if you agree with this, but when Coach Fickle got hired at Wisconsin, I like Luke Fickle as a coach. I just don't know how dynamic of a recruiter he is because he was at Cincinnati, right? Where it's just like you're pulling from a certain pool of players and you have to develop them really well. And he did that
Mhm.
at Cincinnati. Obviously, he was a very
Yeah.
good coach at Cincinnati. I just don't know what type of level of high level recruiter he is. And I think that we're starting to see again, like to start getting mentioned more is a great sign, right? Like that shows that recruits are listening because
Mhm.
Wisconsin is a good program, has been throughout the history, right? But overall, it's not like the most appealing one as far as like in the Big Ten. I mean, like it's a lot cooler to go to Ohio State than Wisconsin, for instance, right?
Mhm.
Notre Dame fighting for players. It's a lot cooler to go to Notre Dame versus Wisconsin, but I think that Coach Fickle has done a pretty good job as far as it making Wisconsin more attractive the last year or so. I think he's done a better
And
job there.
and what you mean by attractive, it's really a similar once again, it's really a similar conversation to what we're seeing take place at Notre Dame because both schools are known for great offensive lines, good running backs, quarterback room was really questionable, right? Defense, strong defense, really good defensive coordinators, toughness. They have a lot of similarities, right? But to go to the next level, you have to start getting playmakers at certain positions, like playmakers at wide receivers. You have to get that next level quarterback. And that's the challenge that has faced both of these men. I think Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have answered those
Yeah.
questions,
Mm-hmm.
via the portal or via recruiting at quarterback, wide receiver. I think linebacker we'll start to see. We could start with, we're about to get into the breakdown of Anthony Sacca. And if he chooses Notre Dame, what he would bring, I mean, that falls right in line with exactly what we're talking about. So that is, you have to tip your cap to coaches that come in and just don't want to continue the tradition of what that school can do. Like in a
Right.
state like Wisconsin, from a high school standpoint, it's pretty easy. And Notre Dame bears witness to that with Billy Schrouf, Owen Strebick. You can find good offensive linemen in the state of Wisconsin at
Oh,
the
no
prep
doubt.
level. Oh,
Yep.
that's no problem. You produce that. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can keep those guys in state, as Wisconsin, which they've been able to do, yeah, you're going to have pretty good run game, physicality, and that's going to be at the forefront. They've always been active in Chicago, going back to when Barry Alvarez left Notre Dame and took over.
That's why they were
So,
so good, Sean. That's why they were so
yeah,
good. They dipped into Chicago, baby. That's all. That's it.
just had to mention it. You
Yeah,
threw
I
your
love it,
jersey, you
man.
threw
I
your
love it.
jersey out there. I had to rep a little bit.
I
But
love it,
no,
man.
no, just bringing it up and really digging into it. Um, two former Buckeye linebackers that
Mhm.
came up together, coached together, and now facing similar challenges at schools that are trying to change the narrative from a recruiting standpoint of who they are or who they were to get
Sure.
to the next level. Yeah.
No doubt. So those are the schools, folks. Again, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke are the schools that Anthony Sacca will be selecting from tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern time on the Rivals YouTube channel. So make sure that you check that out when it drops. If he does select Notre Dame, there will be an IB show afterwards, but obviously you need the notification bells on to know one, if he selected Notre Dame, and two, if there is definitely going to be a show. So make sure that you hit that notification bell on YouTube and make sure that you get everything that's going to come to you on this
Mm-hmm.
commitment to Notre Dame. So Sean, let's talk now about what Anthony Sacca would bring to Notre Dame if Notre Dame does land him tomorrow. Okay. And obviously we'll go deeper into that as far as analysis if he does select Notre Dame after the fact. But I want to just kind of give everyone an early pulse because there was even a question about what we think about him as a player, and we'll get to that, right? Like we're not going to watch film today, but we've obviously both seen Anthony Sacca, so let's talk about it, right? First and foremost, Sean, you are getting, and I would love your insight here. You are getting a 6'3", 225-pound linebacker who is rated as high as the number 57 player in the country by Rivals out of one of the top prep schools in the Northeast, out of Philadelphia, out of Pennsylvania, that although he's a New Jersey guy, still technically out of Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania's been a spot that's been kind of hit or miss for Notre Dame, right? Like they've had some successes, but not as much as I would like, honestly. And I think that for me, this would be a huge one because not only are you getting a talented linebacker that fits the mold of what you've been trying to build, but you also get one from a very high level school, one that had high level offers from just about everyone in the country. I think this would be a big deal for Notre Dame.
I love what he brings to the table because it answers a question, once again, that's been out there about Notre Dame. Linebackers in space, tackling in space, being able to run to the ball in space, especially against these modern offenses in college football. You watch his film, that's the one thing that jumps out immediately. And it's amazing because he started out as safety. You still see him playing some safety on film in certain plays. And being from Chicago, that's like the Brian Urlacher effect, right? And you hope that he follows that path, which is a Hall of Fame path. That's all, if he comes to Notre Dame, I hope he ends up being the kid that plays safety, goes to linebacker, and ends up being a 12-year vet in the NFL, Hall of Famer, and brings Notre Dame a national championship. But I love his ability to run in space, to be a sure tackler in space, to be used various ways in defenses, whether it's blitzing off the edge. I love him in coverage. Like, it's very rare that you watch young men at linebacker that seem and look comfortable in coverage, right? That means when they turn their back to the ball, they're not panicking. They're very comfortable running with the running back in a wheel route, running with the tight end. That's what you see when you watch this young man on film. So he's a very talented young man, has a lot to work with, and I'm very interested in what Al Golden sees or how Al Golden sees him being a fixture in the Notre Dame defense, if he decides to come to Notre Dame.
One, Sean, that's a great way to segment into talking about Anthony Sacca as a football player, because we actually had a super chat from Ryan Benami. Again, super chats. If you guys want to send them in, we're not doing a full mailbag today because we have a 4-segment show already planned for you all. So you want to throw in some super chats, though. We will make sure to get to those during the duration of the show. Ryan Benami said, thoughts on Anthony Sacca? IB wasn't too high on his junior film. Is he considered to be towards the bottom of the linebacker board with how deep it is? I trust our coaches, though. I would just like to say this. I know Brian had some hesitation about his junior year film. Sean, I didn't. I really didn't. I think that he looked a little different than what he did as a sophomore, but put on about 20 pounds. I expect him to look a little bit different. For me, I think the building blocks are all there to be an imposing player on the next level, because you mentioned it. He has experience playing in space. He has played strong safety, single high free safety. He's played overhang. He's played inside linebacker. I don't accept the premise, and we'll watch film if Notre Dame does land Anthony Sacca, but I don't accept the premise that he lost athleticism as a junior. I don't accept it, right? Did he get slightly more tightly wound? Maybe. I mean, he's gained 20 pounds. I mean, Sean, if you gain 20 pounds, wouldn't you lose a little bit of flexibility? I mean, that's just kind of how that works, like that's just kind of body maturation a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
the second or third play on his huddle highlight tape is him working in man coverage against a slot where they're motioning away from him and they run like a jet to the player, and he comes all the way across field and closes on this jet sweep at the sideline at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
I'm like, guys, there's no lack of speed here. There's not. This kid is 6'3", 225 pounds, has experience playing in space, has played a little bit of everywhere, and can run for days. So he has a good frame. He can run. I really, really like Anthony Sacca I'll put it like this, Sean. I love the physical makeup of Anthony Sacca. I think there's a lot to develop there. And I think you said that as well, right? There's a lot to work with. There's a foundation. I think the thing that we need to remember, though, is that he was asked to do a lot of things last year for St. Joe's. A lot. And a lot of it was new. Like, he had mostly played free safety, strong safety his previous 2 years. We saw the same thing. People were here. And I remember people having this conversation. Bodie Cahoon doesn't look athletic. BS. He doesn't look athletic. I watched 2 plays and I'm like, that guy can run for days. He just didn't have a ton of experience playing linebacker. He had to play on the second level. I hate to tell you this, guys. On the second level, things happen so much faster. You have to be so much more It's so much more goes into the diagnostic side of the game. You have to be more proactive than reactive a lot of times. And if you're a step slow on your process, you're going to look like you're not in the right position all the time, right? I looked at this kid though, and I said, that kid is athletic and can run for days, and he is plenty fast, quick, and everything you need him to do to be a multi-dimensional linebacker on the next level. I'm not worried about athleticism and skill sets. I think it's just about, I hope St. Joe says, we're going to play you strictly on the second level this year, and we're going to give you another full year of playing linebacker. Because I think similarly, because someone asked about this, but I think similarly, this could be a Bodie Cahoon type of thing, Sean, where it was like you saw the tools, but the process was still a little bit slow as a junior because he just hadn't done it a ton because he was a former safety coming out of Patrick Henry and Roanoke. But once the game slows down, then you're going to see that speed pop even more than it already does because it's just about getting used to playing linebacker. Because I hate to tell people out there, they might undersell it a little bit, Sean, but playing linebacker is kind of hard, man. It is not an easy position. It's about eye discipline and flow, but it's also about comforts. Reps matter so much. And I think Anthony Sacca will take a huge jump as far as being a producer at a higher level as a senior when the game starts to slow down a little bit.
And it's totally different vision, right? You come from viewing the game 15 yards off the ball, 10 yards off the ball. So now you're in the midst of the action, right? So now your keys and the things that you're watching are totally different. And you're asking the kid to adjust. First of all, let's just take, if you feel like he's good enough to get it and you can deal with the transition of the kid, that speaks volumes to who he is as an athlete and his intelligence and what the coaches think about him. You're not about to bring a kid from safety to linebacker if you don't think he can handle it and play at a level good enough for you to win a state championship and be one of the best programs in the country. So, we can sit here and dissect this film. Right. We're talking about high schoolers. We can sit here and nitpick and dissect top 50 kids film if that's what we wanted to do. And like you said, this kid, he's very similar to Bodie Cahoon as far as their progression in the game, what they were asked to do, and their ability to do it at the level that they were able to do it, to even attract the attention of the schools that came after them and offered them, but then have the scrutiny of some people that watch the film and say, I don't know. Like, I know one thing, Notre Dame linebackers have struggled in space for a long time.
Right.
This kid doesn't. He answers a question. And from that standpoint, I trust Al Golden. I don't need to go and really dissect. I see an answer to a question that exists in our linebacking core. And I trust Al Golden and the staff and Max Bullock to go ahead and develop.
Yeah.
If he decides if this young man decides to come to Notre Dame, and based upon if he decides to come to Notre Dame, don't get it twisted. I still want the likes of Owusu Bank, Boateng, both of the Jones boys, McHale. I still want those guys, right? It's not like, okay, we got him. No. Go get the other top guys as well and make it a hell of a linebacker class. That's what you do.
Agree. And this is one thing, Sean, if Notre Dame is able to get Sacca, is that there is still potentially 2 linebacker spots open, right? And so you have a chance to put together a really good class in the end. So we'll see what the next step will be if Anthony Sacca does join Notre Dame, but that is what he brings to the table, and that is what we're super excited about. We know that news is dropping, Sean. Apparently, Clarence Lewis just hit the portal. It is being reported, so I don't know if that was something that was anticipated or not, but that apparently is happening. So there we are. Wanted to knock this one out, Sean, before we transition to the next segment, because it's kind of unrelated to recruiting, but Tom Connor was nice enough to put a super chat out there. So always want to pay our dues and say thank you so much. Just a thanks for enlightening some people on X today. It's amazing the lack of knowledge on why Notre Dame can and wants to stay independent. I think this was a conversation Brian has been having on Twitter about why Notre Dame's independence is stronger than ever. Or is this? Oh, you joined in on it?
It was an ESPN article that was written about it.
Yes.
Yep. And then Brian retweeted it
Mhm.
and just said, yo, I had mentioned this in the show. And then here comes the Ohio State fans, talking about arrogance and all of this. And, first they started out with finances. Like, you're losing out on
Right.
money. I don't understand why you're staying independent. And then, once Brian countered with the financials that made sense even now, they had nothing to say. So then they went to the whole irrelevant
Of
argument.
course. Yeah.
You haven't been
That's always
relevant.
that's always the fallback is the irrelevant
Yeah.
thing, right? It's
Yeah.
always the fallback.
So, I just came with, I thought this conversation, you said the conversation was about Notre Dame and finances. Who do you think has more money, Notre Dame or Ohio State? Since you said it was about money and finances that Notre Dame needs, who has more money, Notre Dame or Ohio State? And he hasn't responded yet. And it's been like 2
Oh, yeah,
hours.
he hasn't
No,
responded yet. Oh, that's my
no,
favorite.
he left the conversation. It's like, don't start an argument about money and finances, and that's your whole point of why Notre Dame needs to join a conference. And then when I say, well, who has more money, Notre Dame or Ohio State? You're a public school. Notre Dame's a private school.
Right.
Who has more money? You have no rebuttal. So
Yeah.
that kind of answers why Notre Dame doesn't need a conference for money, for revenue.
Right.
They don't need a conference. They need a conference for a path to a national championship. That's it.
Sure.
That's it. If they ever get blocked in a unfortunate way somehow from doing that, I even think with the contract of the new expansion, Notre Dame gets paid even if they don't make the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Who else could do that?
Right. Right.
Who else can do that?
Illinois. I don't know. I'm just
Only Notre Dame cannot be in the ACC, but still get a cut of the TV revenue from the ACC. Don't be mad because you can't do what Notre Dame can do.
Right.
Misery loves company, I guess. You want us to join you in the Big Ten, where you have to share money with schools like Rutgers and Iowa and
don't throw shade at Rutgers, man. Don't throw it in.
oh no, my fault.
I'm just kidding.
That's the Jersey school. My bad. That's the Jersey school.
That's oh gosh, it's too funny. That's so funny. But yeah, it's I mean, Sean, we've been talking about this for a long time, though, right? As far as like, I mean, I've always been an advocate that Notre Dame should stay independent as long as they possibly can. Like, that's just, I don't know why you're forcing the issue right now.
Let me
I
just
don't
say,
understand.
Archer, you do not want to play big bank, take little bank when it comes to Ohio State, Notre Dame. You don't want that. I don't care how much Ohio State spends on football. Don't try to do that. Notre Dame.
There's difference between being well off and being cheap, right? Yeah. We saw one cheap offseason from
you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. That's why I tell people, do you really leave Notre Dame alone? Because if Notre Dame really start digging into that NIL the way they can, it wouldn't even be fair.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fair. Just be thankful.
Sure. I mean, there's a big difference between having money and being willy-nilly and spending money, right? Like there's a huge difference there. I mean, because I know, Sean, I don't know about you, but like I've had friends that had a good amount of money that would pay. I have friends that had a low amount of money would still pay. And then I've had vice versa where, they're stingy and they're not going to pay anything. You know what I mean? Like it's just how structurally you operate more than anything, right? Notre Dame is there's never going to be a concern over how much money Notre Dame has. Just
hey, Ryan, if I gave you $5,
yes,
and you spent $4,
yes,
or I gave you $3 and you spent $1, which option would you rather be?
I'd rather pick the first one. Yes, I'd rather pick the first one.
Yes. Oh, you rather spend the $4?
Oh, wait. No, I messed it up. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, wait a minute.
No, I have $2 in the second scenario, $1 in the first one, right? So yes, I would pick the second one. That's it. My bad. You messed me up, man. You can't ask me math.
No, I'm just saying, people get so caught up. That's why people are quick to this person got automatic money. Oh, they always follow or love to say how much athletes are making, right?
Right.
Right. And when athletes say, I need more money, they have no understanding of like, yo, if I'm an athlete, I just can't live in a regular neighborhood. I can't.
Right. It's a
I have to
luxury type
go.
of thing, right?
I have to go to a certain neighborhood. The team is not going to. If I played for the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Bulls would not allow me to live on the south side of Chicago. I might want to live in a man. Let me find the nicest neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. Chicago Bulls are going to tell me, no. You have to find somewhere else to stay. You need to find a gated community with some security, all of that, right? And it's just the way it is.
Yep.
You know, that's more expensive, bigger mortgage.
Yep.
You know, half their money is gone when it comes to just taxes. So all of that comes with, you know, you can get all the money in the world. I just know you have more expenses as a public school than Notre Dame has as a private school.
Oh yeah,
So
I mean,
what?
I think that's pretty accepted, right? Like that's pretty
So
accepted knowledge.
my point is, at the end of the day, who has more left on the balance sheet? Don't get it twisted.
Right.
Well, we're getting this as a Big Ten school. Yeah, Illinois is getting that same deal, the other Big Ten school, but Illinois can't compete with Notre Dame from a revenue standpoint. They can't. It's you know, it is when people buzz around money in Notre Dame and they look at, oh, you're missing out on this. No, they're not.
No,
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not missing out on anything. They're not.
Agreed. But Tom, we thank you so much for the super chat. And I actually did not see the conversation that that Sean was having on Twitter, so I'll have to go back.
No, it wasn't me. I just said one thing. It was a conversation. It was Brian battling it out with Ohio State.
Gotcha.
And I just chimed in at the end.
Gotcha. All right, we'll have to go check out that conversation because I completely missed that. Full transparency, I've been trying to get off of X a little bit more recently, so yeah, I'm trying to rid myself of that chaos every single day a little bit more. But regardless, folks, we are going to get into some recent recapping of Notre Dame visits over the last week. Then we'll talk about the upcoming week and some visitors that you should be expecting and what that will mean for Notre Dame. We have a special interview for you at the end as well. So we're getting on to the second segment of the show. Before we do, hit that like button for us. Make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. Hit that notification bell if you have not already. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether that is Apple, Spotify, or anything in between, make sure you hit a 5-star review. And we'll talk to you on the next segment here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, we are about to hit April, and April especially is going to be a very busy month in the recruiting world. A lot of players in the 2025 and 2026 and even 2027 class are going to be visiting South Bend, Indiana for spring practices. We had the Blue Gold game on April 20th, so it's going to be a lot of players that are going to be there as well. That's going to be one of the biggest recruiting weekends of the year. So we are working our way, my friend, but we have already started the visits. And this past week, there were a couple very important visitors that made their way to campus. We've had multiple recruiting recaps on the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you go over there for the most recent articles. And as we make the full transition to the new platform, there are still some of those articles up at irishbreakdown.com for free content if you want to look at it there. But if you want it as soon as it happens, literally last weekend, Sean, we had that nice recap piece on the message board. It was probably like 12 or 13 bullet points of just conversations that we've had with Notre Dame recruits that made the visit this past week, last weekend, how everything went, early thoughts on Notre Dame, a little bit of everything. But during the week this past week, there were also some very important visitors that made their way to campus. I want to start with 2025, Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy, wide receiver, Raiden Vines Bright. 6 foot, 175 pounds. He was previously at a high school in Arizona, Sean, had over 1,000 yards as a junior, 8 touchdowns. He will be playing his senior year at IMG Academy. Notre Dame has been recruiting him for a couple months now in pretty good standing. And Raiden Vines-Bright made his first visit to campus this past week, Sean, for a 2-day visit, rated as a 4-star and the number 149 overall player in the 2025 class by On3. So a very well liked recruit in the class 2025. Notre Dame got his first look at him, Sean. He got his first look at Notre Dame on campus. Some early tidbits, and then we'll talk about just kind of, him and wide receiver recruiting a little bit just in general. But Raiden had told me that Notre Dame is a team that is going to be in it with him until the very end. They have a team that he has been high on now for a couple months since they started recruiting him even harder after offering him. And he really liked the history behind Notre Dame, kind of the seclusion a little bit, right? A little bit of a smaller campus, a little bit more of a homey feel. They got out there, and I think Notre Dame's in a pretty good spot with Raiden Vine-Bright, man. Again, like this board, we'll see how it figures out as of today, but right now you have commitments from Elijah Burris, Jerome Bettis Jr., Sean Terry. There is at least one wide receiver spot opened in 2025, but there might be two, right? Like there might be. Because if you get Derek Meadows, I still think that Notre Dame would entertain taking Taylon Taylor or Raiden Vines-Bright. I think those are the two kind of guys on the list outside of Derek Meadows.
You would hope
sign,
so.
though. Good, yeah, hopes for sure. Hope so. But I think it's a real good sign, Sean. Things are trending very well with Raiden Vines-Bright. We'll see if there's a spot left for him in the class if he does choose to go to Notre Dame. But I think it's very positive that you get this great remarks from an IMG receiver, which is a spot that, which is a dynamic that Notre Dame needs to tap into a little bit more. Some of these IMG kids, and Raiden Vines-Bright is obviously a very talented one.
He's my low-key 2025 wide receiver recruit.
I like him a lot, man.
He's like my low-key, like, yo, I really like this kid, right? You have the top kids, the Taylon Taylor, you have Derek Meadows. But for me, the route running, the physicality, right? Because I think what we've seen with the offers in 25 and 26 is explosiveness, run after catch ability. His run after catch is a little bit different than, say, some of the other guys that might be a little bit more twitchy, but he is physical, breaks tackles, and still has speed and agility. And I like him a lot too, Double R. I really do. I like this kid a lot. And knowing that they got him up to campus, that's always good. Look, get him up to campus. I'm glad he enjoyed the seclusion of the campus, and that's something that stood out to him. And that's just another thing that in the recruitment could give Notre Dame that little nudge, when it gets to the end of the process to say, okay, this could possibly put them over the top of this kid from IMG, right? And I think we all hope that that's a double coming from IMG in the 25 class.
Maybe three. Maybe three. They're going to put Gavin next. We'll talk about next, actually, into that conversation, right? So, yeah, Notre Dame's trying to hit IMG in the 2025 class. There's no doubt. Another cool note from Raiden is that, Sean, the big sell to him as a player was that they need more speed at wide receiver. Need more speed. And they think that he could be a potential speed threat for them as well. So you got some speed on the board, man. Meadows can run, Vines-Bright can run, Taylon Taylor can run. All these guys can run. So it's whatever combination you end up with, if you end up with 2 out of 3 of any of those 3 that I just said, it's a good spot to be in, man, because that's a lot of speed that they bring to the table, a lot of dynamic ability.
Well, I think they have. This is once again building a wide receiver room. And I think someone asked us in the mailbag, like, which coach would you love to sit with in a film session on the staff? And I kind of went left because most people were like, Mike Dickens, for this reason, that reason, or Al Golden for this, or Denbrock for this reason. I'm like, yo, I would love to sit with Mike Brown. Just based upon the recruiting change that I think I've seen from the evaluation standpoint. Like, yeah, I would like to sit with him and see what he sees in kids that some people have questions about. What is it about your eye that says, yo, this kid has something? And Raiden Vines Bright for me is one of those kids. You watch his film, like I said, you see the speed combination along with the physicality. The same thing with Derek Meadows, right? Even though Derek Meadows was someone that they were on before Mike Brown,
Well,
took the
funny
position.
enough, Sean, they didn't offer Raiden Vines Bright until Mike Brown got there, but apparently they were doing homework on him before Mike Brown even got there. So, guy that's been on the radar for a little bit. But to your point, they
Mhm,
bring an interesting dynamic. Obviously, Derek Meadows is in a much different body. I mean,
mhm.
I talked to Deuce Knight last weekend, and Deuce had said, like, I asked him who's taller, himself or Derek Meadows, and he was like, "Oh, Derek's got me, dude." He's like 6'6", like he's like a legit 6'6", which is kind of wild to think about. When's the last time Notre Dame had a receiver that was 6'6"? Has that ever happened? I genuinely don't know. Because what Stovall was
Oh,
like six
Corey
five,
was
right?
what, 6'5"? Was Corey 6'5"?
Yeah, I think Corey Robinson was like 6'4.5", 6'5". I think Samardzija was right around 6'5". I think that
Yeah.
Mo Stovall was right around 6'5". I mean, have they ever had a 6'6" guy? I mean, I genuinely don't know. At wide receiver,
Who, that's a
yeah.
big dude.
That's huge. Yeah, man. Apparently, it's like a legit 6'6". It's not like he's 6'6",
When
but he's
you
actually
have
6'4.5", you know?
when you have defensive recruits talking about how big Derek Meadows I mean, that lets you know. When you have a
Yeah.
lineman, a defensive line commit
Well, well,
pointing out.
backup said Duval Kamara, but I think Duval was also like 6'5", right? Wasn't he? I don't think he was quite 6'6". I mean,
No, the ball was like
again,
6'4", I think.
was he? Yeah, I know
Yeah, I
Kamara was
think the
tall
ball
though.
was
He
like
was a
six
tall
four.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Micah Jones was also what, like 6'5". He
Hmm.
didn't really play at Notre Dame, but they've had some taller receivers, but I mean 6'6" is like that's outlier huge wide
Yeah.
receiver. Like you just don't see a lot of 6'6" guys. I think of like Marcus Monk that was at
Yeah.
Arkansas. I think of Johnny Wilson that was at Florida State, who was a little bit over 6'6". Yeah. Samardzija, who we talked about, Andrew, was 6'5". I mean, so like they've had some tall receivers, but 6'6" is like
Yeah.
that's wild. That's a wild height.
Hmm.
You already led into it, Sean, a little bit. Getting into IMG, though, 2025 IMG Academy linebacker was also on campus this past week. Gavin Nix, 2-day visit to Notre Dame, Sean. Two-day visit. 6'1", 215-pound inside linebacker. Was actually, I believe, IMG's leading tackler last year, or he was second to Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. Either way, he was 1 or 2 on a very talented team at IMG Academy this past year. This was his second visit to campus. He was there this last offseason as well.
Hmm.
So second offseason in a row has been back to Notre Dame, Sean. I'll say this. I don't know if Gavin Nix ends up in the class, but you ever talk to some of these kids, Sean, on the phone, and you're just kind of like, yeah, that's a Notre Dame kid. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? Like he really impressed me just from a personal perspective. I mean, just super polite, very nice kid overall, very intelligent. And he was talking, one of his biggest selling points that he's looking for is he wants to be developed all around as a person and as a player. So it's not just about being a great football player, which he obviously wants to be. He wants to play in the NFL like most of these kids do, right? But I think it's the all around profile of being a student athlete at Notre Dame. And he knows the draw to that, right? So I think Notre Dame's going to have a chance there in the end. I really do. I've kind of I've been a little bit back and forth on Gavin Nix with Notre Dame because he says the right things about Notre Dame and he's been to Notre Dame. So those are obviously great signs. But the fact that he came back for another visit, the fact that he has just continued to say a lot of great things about the University of Notre Dame consistently, and that he has really boasted about his deep belief in what he wants from a program long term. I think there's something there. And we're starting to get into a linebacker board, which is, if Notre Dame lands Anthony Sacca tomorrow on Saturday, you're getting into a Notre Dame linebacker board that's starting to get smaller now, right? Like there's Noah McHale and Madden Furiamo and Gavin Nix and Nathaniel Usu-Boateng. Like, it's starting to get a little bit of a smaller board for Notre Dame moving forward, right? And obviously there's still a visit schedule for Christian Jones and Antoine Delorier. So like it's still a relatively good sized group, but we're starting now to get a deeper understanding to where linebacker recruiting is going after Anthony Sacca if he commits to Notre Dame. And obviously Gavin List is on the short list there, guys. Like, I think that there's a world where Gavin Nix lands with Notre Dame. Would I necessarily predict it? I'm not sure if I would go so far as to predict it, but I'm just here to say is that he keeps coming back to campus. He says all the right things, and he truly, I believe, does want every part of what Notre Dame would bring, right? So Gavin Nix, potential good fit with Notre Dame. We'll see as we keep kind of moving forward. And yeah, we'll see where things trends kind of down the stretch, potentially getting him back for an official visit because he's a kid that's not going to make a decision before official visits. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see where that one goes. Equanimous St. Brown, I believe, was 6'4" and some change. I do not believe that Equanimous was even 6'5", by the way. And yes, he's taller than his brother Amon Ra. I think Amon Ra was only 6'1", if I remember correctly. So yeah, he's got a couple inches on his brother Amon Ra. Sorry. So just reading the chat there. Equanimous was a tall receiver for sure. Definitely not 6'6" though, and I don't think he was as tall as Maurice Stovall, Jeff Samardzija, those guys. I think they were probably a half an inch taller than what Equanimous was. But yeah, just kind of a couple quick notes there. Let us go now, and we're going to work through a couple more of visitors from this past week. So there's a quarterback, guys, and we're going to have a nice little list of 2026 quarterbacks continuing to visit campus this offseason. We've already seen Noah Grubbs, Lake Mary quarterback out of the state of Florida in 2026 visit. We're also getting a visit from 2026 Cocoa, Florida High School quarterback Brady Hart on Wednesday, April 3rd. But this past week, there was, Michael, you can just Google Equanimous St. Brown Combine, and I promise you that he was not 6'5". So there's this wonderful invention called Google where we can get great information from. So do that, my guy, and then let me know when he's 6'4" and some change. Okay. So sorry, got sidetracked. This is what happens when the chat happens. Okay. I get sidetracked a little bit. San Marcos, California, 2026 quarterback out of Mission Hills, Troy Hume, made his first trip to campus this past week. 6'3", 205 pounds listed actually between 195 and 205 pounds, depending where you look. And by the way, folks, Troy Hume is cleaning up as far as offer list recently. He's obviously has a Notre Dame offer that he got a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, actually a month and a half ago. Florida State. I know what Google says. I said Google Equanimous St. Brown Combine, and then you'll go into his combine results, and it'll. All right, let's do this real quick. Like this is on the fly here, okay? Equanimous St. Brown Combine. We'll do this real quick. Oh man! All right, here we go. All right, Equanimous St. Brown Combine performance. Equanimous measured in at 76 and 7 3/4 of an inch. So he was 6'4" and 3/4. Thank you so much for playing this game with me under 6'5". Like I said, thank you. And Andrew, I was just being a jerk. I'm sorry. I think you guys know me at this point that I'm just a little bit of a jerk sometimes. John, you weren't here to babysit me anymore, man. So I turned into a jerk for a minute there. But
what'd you do? I heard the end of that. Like we still on the
I'm sorry, man. I don't know. I just had some people saying like Equanimous was the tallest receiver Notre Dame's had. I'm just like, no, I think he was lower than 6'5", and then it just went into a little bit of a tailspin there. But we're good now, man. We're talking about Troy Hume, quarterback out of Mission Hills, California.
What was the last good tall receiver?
I mean, Equanimous was good for a year. He was good for a year. He had that one good year where they were terrible, but
let's filter the conversation a little bit.
Last good tall receiver. I mean, Jeff Samardzija was great, right?
He probably would be the
round up to 6'5". What? I'm not rounding up to 6'5". I'm not in math class. Sean, am I 6 foot? I'm 5'11 and 3/4. I'm not 6 foot. Come on, man. Not
Yeah, you
rounding up.
always who doesn't round up? Every
I'm not
man
in math
rounds up
class,
there.
man. I'm not in math class right now. You asked me how tall a player is. I'm telling you that he is in scouting terms, he is 6'0", is how tall Equanimous St. Brown is, which is 6'4 3/4. That's how tall he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the helmet, he's over 6'5". You right. With the shoes, he's over 6'5". You right. But I don't measure with shoes on, man. I don't do that. So this conversation has gone really strange, man. Oh, I appreciate you, Rip Jules. Yes, I tell my wife that I'm 6 foot as well. It does not go well all the time, though, because she doesn't believe that. Sean, Troy Hune, quarterback, Mission Hills. We've lost several viewers because you guys have gotten me derailed here. Okay, let's get back on track. Troy Hune, quarterback, Mission Hills, 2026 class, state of California. Sean, this offer list has been blossoming. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Claypool was also sub 6'5", but you guys are doing this to me. Stop. Go to combineresults.com and look up Chase Claypool, please. He was sub 6'5". I don't want to play this anymore. Let's move on to Troy Hune, quarterback out of Mission Hills, please. Sean, this offseason, this is the offers he's earned, okay? Notre Dame, Florida State, Ohio State, UCLA, Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Michigan State, Nebraska, Oregon, Penn State, Texas A&M, UCF. That is the offers that he has earned this past offseason. Sean, he was in campus at Notre Dame for the first time this past week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sean, he's a guy that we haven't talked a lot about. We haven't talked a lot about Troy Hune because everyone wants to talk about, and I get it, right? They want to talk about Ryder Lyons, Brady Hart, Noah Grubbs, Brady Smigel. They want to talk about those guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Troy Hune, though, is pretty good. I know you liked his film a lot. I remember when he was offered, and you were a fan of Troy Hune.
Man, big fan of this kid, and he glows about his early conversations, or raves, shall I say, about his early conversations with quarterback coach Gino Guidugli. Even coming into the visit, he was like, yo, I can't wait to start building and furthering the conversation and relationship with Coach Guidugli. So that gives Notre Dame a slight edge. To sit here right now, I like this goes to what we said about the offers at the quarterback position when they went out. I'm not mad at dude. Just blindfold me and let me throw a dart. And whatever name the dart lands on, I'm cool with that young man being the quarterback in the 26th class. Literally, and Jared Curtis, he commits to Georgia, so he's off the list. But, now you still have guys like Troy Hune that would be a great face of the 26th class at the quarterback position. So absolutely love this film. Love what he would bring. And he, once again, feels the, and you can, because this is rumored, but do you think this is true from like what you've been doing with the NFL draft and everything? Scouts and their preferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or coaches and their preferences in recruiting. Like a lot of people say, yo, Tommy recruited guys from his eyes and how he played the game.
Sure.
So when he evaluated the quarterback position, it was easy for him to look at a Drew Pine and say, oh, man, I love this kid. So whereas Gino is very evident, Gino wants a big quarterback with a big arm, and, that's his type. So
yep,
Trey Hune fits that type. He's another guy, good arm.
The shortest quarterback on the board for Notre Dame in 2026, and again, this is as a sophomore, is 6'2" Ryder Lyons. Like legit 6'2" Ryder Lyons. Not like 6'2", but he's actually 6'1" or 6'6.5". Like legitimate 6'2", right? So yeah, I mean, we're talking about Troy Hune, who's 6'3 plus. We're talking about Brady Hart, who's 6'4 plus. We're talking about Noah Grubbs, who's 6'4. We're talking about Brady Smigel, who's right around 6'4". I mean, these are tall kids, man, that we're talking about. Now, Sean, I think if we're being honest about it, right, we would say that Brady Hart, Noah Grubbs, Ryder Lyons are probably the top of the board guys right now for Notre Dame. Those are where their eyes are, right?
That's fair.
But they're still recruiting Troy Hune, obviously, because they evaluated Troy Hune this offseason. They went out to see him, and they offered shortly after. Like, obviously, there's something they'd like to see there. And Troy Hune liked a lot of what he saw at Notre Dame. I mean, he spoke very highly. He's on a little bit of a Midwest swing. So literally in 3 straight days, Sean, He got an offer from Michigan while visiting Michigan, offer from Notre Dame while visiting Notre Dame, and an offer from Ohio State while visiting Ohio State. So he's been cleaning up in the Midwest the last couple of days, to say the least. But he had said that he feels like, I think, paraphrasing, but he said something like, I feel like Notre Dame is very honest with me about how much they like me and what they're telling me, right? And I think that that honesty always comes back to positive from Notre Dame for the most part from a recruiting side. I mean, we talked about Dylan McCullough the last year as far as like just how transparent Dylan McCullough is and how honest he is. And I think that we're getting some of the same vibes here. So good step with Troy Hune. Again, I think it depends on how the quarterback board shakes out. And if, let's say Troy Hune takes a massive step as a junior, could he become a guy that's more at the top of the board than probably in the middle of the board? It's possible, right? I think there's just some development that needs to happen from a relationship perspective and for him to take a bigger step as a junior as well. But either way, Salty's about to get kicked out of the chat, Sean. He's about to get kicked out of the chat, okay? He's about to get kicked out of this chat. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Is that something that, because if I'm a head coach,
yes,
it's going to be very important to me. Like, Joe, does my OC or quarterback coach need to be above 6 feet so he'll recruit guys above 6 feet? You know what I'm saying? Like, just based upon the trend of what you see.
There's thresholds for sure. I think there's thresholds for sure. Yeah, I mean, Sean, there has to be, right? Like, I mean, in NFL standards, I would say it like this, right? In NFL standards, like for instance, the Cleveland Browns have an age threshold that the Cleveland Browns will not draft a player in the first 2 to 3 rounds that are above 23 years old. Will not do it. Will not do it. Will not consider it. Well, they will never do it. There's other teams that hold to a strict arm length perspective on offensive tackle players, right? They won't even. So there were some teams. Penei Sewell, who I know you know, is a great player. I mean, one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL already. There are a couple of teams that would not have drafted him in the first round, Sean, because he had sub 34-inch arms. Yeah. Because he had sub 34-inch arms.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a young man a little bit later in the show that has vines for arms.
Vines for arms. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We were definitely going to talk about that. There's no doubt. Last guy I wanted to talk about, Sean. So Troy Hune, guys, Notre Dame, I think, did a good job impressing him. I just think it's how the board's going to kind of develop moving forward, because I don't think anybody would call him the top of the board right now at quarterback, but certainly talented. And it's certainly a good thing for Notre Dame to be able to get him on campus so quickly after offering him only like a month and a half ago. So good step there. Offensive lineman, Sean, 2026 out of Portage, Michigan, Northern, offensive tackle, Gregory Patrick, listed at 6'3", 6'4", 275 pounds. Very well respected as an interior offensive lineman in 2026 class, Sean. Here is his offer list so far. He's got a really nice one already. Baylor, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Penn State, Purdue, Stanford, West Virginia, Wisconsin. So those are his IB. I'm losing my mind. Those are his power 4 offers. Those are his power 4 offers so far. Well liked. Was offered during the Pot of Gold event a few weekends ago on St. Patrick's Day. Got his first look though, Sean, and I would say it like this, is that I think that we're going to see, and I would love to hear if you notice this a little bit, but I think 2025 was dedicated on getting offensive tackle body types.
Yes.
Right? Which 6'8", Owen Strebig, 6'7", Will Black, 6'7", Matty Augustine. They got 3 guys, 6'7" plus true offensive tackle body types. Notre Dame's early offensive line board in 2026. Some more interior guys on this list. You know, there's actually several guys that I look at and say, that's probably an interior player on the next level. So I'm interested to see how they kind of fill out the class just from a strategy perspective, interior offensive line versus offensive tackle, because I think that we're going to get a good variety in 2026 more than we saw in 2025, because I think they're going to be looking at some interior body types as well. Gregory Patrick, spoke very highly of Notre Dame. I expect him to be back on campus again. It's obviously early on in the process. You're fighting against a lot of good schools, obviously, but he spoke very highly of Coach Rudolph, Coach Denbrock, getting to sit in on the meeting and just kind of hear how the offensive line strategizes and how they speak and how they coach each of their players. So a good step here for Gregory Patrick, offensive lineman out of Michigan.
Yeah, 79-inch wingspan right now as a youngster coming off the sophomore year. You're talking about him and that athletic ability at the interior. He's a very intriguing prospect early on. He is. He's an intriguing prospect. And if you want offensive line offers, okay, Michigan, he's a Michigan kid. So, yeah, Michigan offers him, right? But then Wisconsin, okay, bingo, Iowa, bingo, like the offensive line schools.
And honestly, Sean, if I'm Notre Dame right now, I don't care if a kid's from Michigan. Notre Dame is kind of cleaning up on the Michigan Notre Dame battles and recruiting right now. Like I'm not worried about Michigan, man. Like I'm really not. Even if it's a home state Michigan kid, it's like, all right, let's battle, buddy. Let's battle right now. I mean, if Notre Dame gets Mark Zachary, Sean, they're like a 6 or 7-0 in 2025 as far as beating Michigan as finalists for players, which is wild. Like that's a
good
wild
call,
stat, man. Yeah. So if Michigan is a finalist for Gregory Patrick in the end and Notre Dame wants Gregory Patrick, I give Notre Dame a little bit of the uptick on that one. I don't know. I give them a little bit. I'm not afraid of Michigan.
Have they beaten us before? Okay, they got Jair Hill out of Kankakee, Illinois, because Notre Dame backed off.
Right. Well, same thing with Owen Wafel. Like we
Owen
went through the
Wafel
conversation of Owen Wafel. That was a little bit more Notre Dame led than like Michigan flipping them. You know what I mean? Like
they got Brandon Hillman because admissions just wouldn't let him in.
Yep. They didn't lose Brandon Hillman to Michigan. They lost Brandon Hillman to admissions. That is a very different conversation.
I guess, we have been putting the beat down on Michigan in recruiting.
Charles Jagasaw had Michigan pretty high on his list. Yeah, man. I mean, all the offensive linemen in this class. I mean, Owen Strebig wanted like Michigan a good bit. He chose Notre Dame. Matty Augustine had Michigan in his finalists. Will Black had Michigan in his finalists. I mean, Notre Dame has beaten Michigan up a little bit. I mean, now Ohio State, like that's a completely different animal, right? Like you're going to lose some to Ohio State and you're going to have to beat them a little bit more frequently. But Michigan, I'm not worried about Michigan in recruiting. On the field, I'm worried about them because they're a good team, obviously. But in recruiting, not too worried about Michigan. Not worried about them at all. So, yeah. Well, that is the visitors from this past weekend. If there's anybody that we missed, folks, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll have updates as soon as we can on players that have visited this past weekend. Next on the show, we're going to talk about the upcoming week because April 3rd, Wednesday, is going to be a big one. There's going to be several very important recruits in the 2026 class that are going to be on campus for Notre Dame. So don't go anywhere. Before we do, though, like button, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, notification bell if you listen to us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you hit a 5-star review and subscribe to the podcast there. Boards.irishbreakdown.com for all your latest recruiting and team intel. And we'll be back here in a second on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Shawnee, we're going to be busy this week, man. We're going to be busy because there are several players that are going to be on campus and some very important ones, both 2025 and 2026 recruiting classes. Let's start with the 2025s because, again, Notre Dame is hoping to have some great news on Saturday when Anthony Sacca, linebacker, St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, decides between Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke. But after that, Sean, there are still a couple spots of linebackers potentially to fill out in the 2025 class. And one of them is a player that Notre Dame has known about for a very long time and a player that Notre Dame has been high on for a very long time and that people around here have been high on. And that is Laverne, California, Bonita linebacker Noah McHale, who's rated as a top 100 player by multiple platforms, 6'3", 220 pounds. Sean, he's going to be back on campus. This will be Noah McHale's second time on campus, first time since last offseason. He will be visiting on Wednesday, April 3rd. We know how high Brian Driscoll is on Noah McHale. Notre Dame is also extremely high on Noah McHale. This is the type of player that you'll probably take no matter what if he ends up wanting to go to Notre Dame. I would say it like this, though, Sean. There's a big push out west for Noah to stay out there. Okay, so USC and Oregon, I think, are two of the main teams that you're fighting against, and then
Mhm.
obviously some of the SEC schools as well. But I would say right now that if what schools am I most worried about? Oregon, USC for me, and then probably Alabama would be thrown in there as well. Notre Dame needs to really have a big one here, Sean, because
Yeah.
one, you need to make sure that you impress enough to get an official visit from Noah McHale, definitely, right? That's first and foremost. Two, I think that there's just I want to call it an uphill battle, but there is a lot of pressure on this visit because you're playing against some big time programs for the star linebacker out of Bonita. So they really need to show out Noah McHale on Wednesday, Sean. They need to impress him, make him want to come back, and hope to have the deep chance in the end. This is a big one for Noah McHale.
Not only that, the momentum. But I have to give it to Lincoln Riley. He had a huge deficit on the defensive side of the ball, on the field and in recruiting. And he has made the right moves and pushed the right buttons to start to solve that. And this past weekend, when they had the entire eyes of the NFL on them, they took that buzz and they got everybody surrounded their big recruiting weekend, and they were able to get 3 to 4 big time recruits committed to that program. And that can only be something that, like you talk about, that Notre Dame now has to face with a kid like Noah McHale. Like, no, USC is probably going to be more formidable now in this recruitment along with Oregon. So you're right. This visit is very important, right? And you look for Coach Golden, Coach Bullock to really make a push to let this young man know. I think this pitch might be about, we need you.
Yep.
We don't just want you. We need you. And this is why we need you in our defense. And this is how we see you impacting our defense. And it would play well, I think, to see Kingston play, Jaden play. Jaden and Drake are going to play. But, if a kid like Kingston can get in and get some run, that go a long way with a kid like Noah McHale to say, okay, this might be the place I want to go. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things played out, because I do think Lincoln Riley has made some very good hires on the defensive side of the ball that might change some things up in recruiting, because a lot of schools have been coming in and just pretty much pillaging the state of California and Southern California the last 2 recruiting cycles.
Well, Sean, we had Max Torres came on the show a couple weeks ago, who covers Oregon for Fan Nation, and he said something very interesting. And he actually talked to me about this before. He said that Oregon feels like they can get anybody out of California that they want right now, like recruiting wise. Like it's not a threat. And when you look at the couple classes, for the most part, Oregon's gotten pretty much every California kid they want in the last couple of recruiting classes, right? And if you're USC, can't let that happen. You can't let that happen. I understand that you are a transfer portal driven team. I understand that ideology, but ultimately you need to be better recruiting high school level. You have to be. And I think we saw some good signs from Lincoln Riley this past offseason. You hired, I thought, was a really good defensive coach hire at defensive coordinator and DeAntoine Lynn. I think that you're seeing a little bit of an uptick in recruiting. So maybe it's good signs of things to come. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see if it's able to be sustained a little bit, but I agree with you. It looks a little better than it did, because after the season, I'm just kind of like, man, they don't recruit very well. And they just had a 7-5 season. Like, that's not a great situation to be in. And your defensive coordinator stinks. Well, they changed at least one of those things, right? So I think their defense coordinator at least is going to be a whole lot better than what it has been recently. So yeah. You got to go toe to toe with a couple of the Western schools that we've talked about, USC, Oregon. You got to fend off a couple of the SEC schools like Alabama, and you have to impress Noah McHale this upcoming Wednesday April 3rd. Who will be there also, Sean, that day is 2025 Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor safety Jadon Blair, who has come on this channel before, has been a player Notre Dame has liked for a long time, Sean. I have said in the past, and I still believe this, I think this is a Penn State Notre Dame battle. Still do. I think Florida State's done a pretty good job. I think a couple other schools have at least had his attention. But I really, truly believe that this is a Notre Dame Penn State battle in the end. And Notre Dame, I actually thought was probably had a slight lead at some points, right? And I still think they have a little bit of a lead, but I thought they had a pretty decent lead. Then Chris O'Leary left, which I thought kind of left things open a little bit. Now, good thing for Notre Dame is I think Notre Dame recovered really quickly with Mike Mickens and being able to establish that relationship. But you have to win in the end. And Jadon also has a official visit scheduled for what's June 10th and 11th or June 11th and 12th, something like that, right? So he's going to be come back to Notre Dame twice this offseason. But this one's big, Sean. If you can knock this one out of the park on Wednesday, I think you can ride momentum to that official visit and just put the stamp on it at that point. Impress Jadon Blair, and I think Notre Dame has a good chance to close that one potentially.
It's funny because this has been a roller coaster for us. Forget it being a roller coaster for Jadon Blair. Just our feelings about where Notre Dame stands, where they were. Oh, this week, oh, we're feeling this. The next day, oh, we're feeling that. And then he had to make some changes in his visits, right? Because he made this announcement of when he was going to announce, which means he got to put his visits up a little bit because Notre Dame had a visit that's after the date that he announced for his announcement date. So they got him. I think they get the second to last shot before Penn State, right? I think it's Notre Dame and then Penn State are the last two official visits for Jadon Blair. So there it is in a nutshell. Yeah, like you said, Double R. Here we go. It's going down to the end. Notre Dame. Now, I would rather have just anything in life. I would rather get off to a great start.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And
you don't
Notre
want to
Dame
come from the back. You don't want to come from the back all the time. Yeah, agreed.
Pause. But
I didn't even catch that one, man. That was bad. Didn't even catch that one. Nice.
But no. Seriously, but no, I would much rather in this recruitment than Notre Dame got off to a good start and then just has to hold everyone else off.
Oh gosh, that's how you know, Sean. I need either a nap or a cup of coffee or something, man, because that was a bad one that I just walked into. That was a really, really bad one. But regardless, yes, I think that
but besides the IB recruiting and the Power Four.
Yeah, well, the IB, yeah. All the IB offers they were going to get.
Yeah, my boy needs some rest.
Oh man, that was a really bad one. So hopefully we can clip that or throw that into the archives. I don't know what we're gonna do with that little clip there, but that was pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Jadon Blair, big time player out of Mount Tabor in the state of North Carolina. Notre Dame has a chance, I believe, down the stretch here to close. And if they do, Sean, if Notre Dame ends up with a 3-man safety class of Jadon Blair, Ivan Taylor, and Ethan Long, that is the best safety class Notre Dame has had in. I mean, that's
a long
wild,
time,
man. That's a wild class potentially.
And
we're
to be honest,
yeah,
Notre Dame fans, I know he's gone, but if you're gonna leave, if they get Jadon Blair,
yeah,
that Chris O'Leary went out with a bang.
Yep.
Chris O'Leary went out with a bang.
Because he laid the foundation for that one.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, we give Mike Mickens some credit for closing the deal, right? But ultimately, that would be because Coach O'Leary got you to that point of yeah. And then he goes to the NFL, and recruiting doesn't have to be a thing anymore. So yeah. But he's a big one. There's no doubt about it. 2025, those are the two guys that we're expecting on Wednesday, Sean. Thursday. Wednesday also was going to have 3 2026 players I want to talk about briefly. One is Brady Hart. Actually, no, we're going to save Brady Hart for a reason. Tristan Phillips, who's a linebacker out of California, Sean. This one's weird, okay? And weird in the sense of Tristan Phillips was offered on Pot of Gold Day. And Tristan Phillips is a linebacker out of Ventura High School, 6'3", 210 pounds. I watched his film, Sean, and I thought he was really good. Like, very talented, rangy dude, plays out in space a ton. Kind of looks a little bit like Anthony Sacca, to be honest, talent-wise.
Yeah.
But then I look at his offer list, Sean. Not a very good offer list right now. It's weird to me. He's got Notre Dame, Arizona, Arizona State, San Diego State, San Jose State, and Cal Poly. That's it. I don't really get the lack of momentum on the recruiting side right now for Tristan Phillips, but he's going to get his first look on campus, which I think is, again, he told me in an interview, I did a visit preview, Sean, he was like, Notre Dame is by far my top school right now, like by far, right? And I'm just like, well, I've seen your offer list, all due respect, but also Notre Dame obviously likes the player that they see on film, which I did too. I'm just more stating this by, I watched Tristan Phillips out of Ventura, and I don't understand why USC's not coming, UCLA's not coming, Washington. Like, I don't understand why some of those West Coast schools aren't coming, but good for Notre Dame, Sean. Like you said, early impressions are a great start, obviously. So, yeah, we'll see if they're able to make tremendous movement with them. But Wednesday, I think you have a chance to increase that momentum that you have building already. I also wanted to bring up this one, Sean. Speaking of linebackers in the 2026 class, you had posted this on the message board because it got announced yesterday, okay? And I did a little bit of a follow-up piece on it this morning as well. I always love hearing names that you're very familiar with because it makes you feel old. Okay. And this is a guy that made me feel old, Sean. And a weird one. Okay. So Matthews, North Carolina, Weddington, 2026 linebacker, Thomas Davis Jr. Yes. To everyone going, yes. That is Thomas Davis's son, who Thomas Davis is only 40, by the way. So, like, right, a kid pretty young. I mean, probably when he was 24 or something, probably around 16, I would guess. But Thomas Davis Jr., star linebacker, Weddington, also offered on the Pot of Gold Day, Sean, coming to campus this Wednesday. This is a young man on the 247 composite ranking, is rated as number 59 overall player in the 2026 class, number 3 linebacker, number 6 player in the state of North Carolina. Impressive, man. He's an impressive kid. And Sean, Notre Dame, and we've talked about this, has had a lot of success with former players' kids, right? I've had a lot of success. So getting Thomas Davis Jr. on campus is pretty dang cool on Wednesday for Notre Dame.
You know what's funny?
Yes.
People laugh. They talk about Notre Dame players, and Notre Dame doesn't get top talent. But it seems like the top NFL talented players prefer their kids go to a school like Notre Dame. Isn't it amazing? The kids that came from Georgia, that dads came from Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and then all of a sudden they become parents and they're like, yeah, I think I prefer my kid go to a school like Notre Dame. I wonder why.
Happens a lot, man. Happens a lot, actually. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Why do you think that is, Sean? Why do you think that is?
I'm going to keep my comments to myself. I just thought it was an interesting question. That's
interesting question. Makes the mind wonder, Sean. Makes the mind wonder.
Sometimes as adults, what you think isn't important, and once you live life, you're like, you know what? I wish I had this.
Sure.
I wish I had this to fall back on. I wish I had a degree from this spot to fall back on.
Amen. Amen, sir. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I think I want my kid to have that.
You know what's weird, Sean? Thomas Davis Jr. has a pretty healthy offer list, and he's ranked very high. I mean, he's got offers from Auburn, Notre Dame, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Miami, LSU, Indiana, NC State, North Carolina, Ole Miss, Penn State, Tennessee, South Carolina, USC, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, West Virginia. Georgia hasn't offered yet. And obviously his dad was a pretty dang good player at Georgia, man. First round pick out of the
Yeah.
out of the Georgia Bulldogs.
Stay out of the fray, Kirby. Stay out of the fray.
Hey, yeah, he doesn't need to get into
No
this one.
need. No need.
Yeah.
No.
It sounds like Thomas Davis Jr. is very high on Notre Dame, though, because I had him for an interview after he was offered, and he spoke very highly of Notre Dame. And I think, Sean, again, you just talked about it and alluded to it, but a lot of former players' sons tend to kind of get it, right? They kind of get it, and it makes a little bit more sense, right? It makes a little bit more sense. It probably makes more sense to the parents than the actual student at the time or at the kid at the time. But regardless, Notre Dame can make some waves early on in this recruitment, which would be great because he is a heck of a young player.
Mm-hmm.
Last player that will be visiting on Wednesday for the first time, Cocoa, Florida high school quarterback, 2026, Brady Hart, Sean. Brady Hart's 6'4", 185 pounds listed. We've been told that he's up to about 195 pounds now, so he is certainly gaining weight. This kid's good, Sean. He's a really good player. And we'll have a little bit more insight to him in a few minutes. But this is a big one for Notre Dame because you just got Noah Grubbs on campus about a week ago. Troy Hune just came to campus. Brady Hart's now coming on campus. And I would say right now, that means that you've had 2 out of 3 of your top quarterback targets in 2026 on campus. Ryder Lyons has not set a visit to Notre Dame as of yet.
Yeah.
But Noah Grubbs, Brady Hart, good friends, train together. But I think that Notre Dame has a chance to really understand who their quarterback is in 2026 this offseason, Sean, because both those kids are planning on potentially making a decision before their junior year. Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart. It's both on the table. I know we are both big fans of Brady Hart. Notre Dame has a chance to impress one of the top quarterbacks in 2026 on Wednesday.
Can't wait. This is going to be another one of those things where I'll be in town. I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we have access Wednesday. I think that's the next time we have access.
It makes sense, right? Because they want all the cameras around the recruits too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, makes sense.
So definitely looking forward. I just, I'll measure him myself for you, Ryan, to make sure he's 6'4".
I already have an official measurement on him, Sean. He is a hair over 6'4", sir.
I have this measuring tape app on my phone, right? So I'll do it right there next to him. But no.
I know the app you're talking about. Like you hold it up and then scan, and then it tells you. Okay, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So no. I love this kid, right? Love the film, love the moxie, love the makeup of the kid. And like I said, he's probably, we talk about this. It's certain days I wake up and it's a Ryder Lyons day.
Yeah.
And then I wake up and it's a Brady Hart day.
Yeah.
And then it's a Noah Grubbs day. Or it might even be a Brady Schmeigel day. It really
good,
is, man.
Pretty good players. Yeah.
Like, let me watch this film again. Like, ooh.
Right.
And what it is was like for Schmeigel, like I said, Malik coaches against him or has coached against him. So he's seen him in person, and Malik raves about the kid. So these kids come out. You see these kids throwing for like 45, 50 touchdowns as freshmen and sophomores. It's like, what in the world is happening?
Sean, it's wild, man. I remember seeing Noah Grubb's stat line initially, right? Like when he threw like 41 touchdowns or something like that. I'm like, that's nuts, dude. Who does that? And then I saw Ryder Lyons numbers, and then I saw Brady Hart's numbers and Brady Schmeigel's numbers. I'm like, bro, like the only one that doesn't have like crazy stats is Troy Hune. Like he's the only one on the list that doesn't have like stupid stats, right? But I mean, yeah, dude, it is nuts how advanced quarterback play is getting on the high school level, I guess, for the lack of a better term. I mean, that you are now getting some kids that are putting up just these eye-popping numbers every single year as sophomores. And by the way, Sean, Brady Hart plays against some dang good competition in Florida, man. It's like he's playing against Bubs, like he's playing against St. Thomas Aquinas and those cats, right? Like he's playing against some good teams, man. So yeah, I'm really a big fan of Brady Hart. Again, if Notre Dame ends up with Noah Grubbs, Brady Hart, Ryder Lyons, I'll be happy either way, man. I mean, I am a Ryder Lyons guy, like number one, but overall, if you got either one of those other two, or you got a Brady Schmeigel, like I'd be happy. I'd be happy about it. Like they're all very, Very talented. I mean, if they
And
got
not
Jared
like
Curtis, I'd be ecstatic, but whatever.
not like settle happy. Like I'm not feeling like I'm
No.
settling.
Right.
I'm genuine. It's genuine. I'm happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're all excellent. They just bring a little bit of a different skill set, each of them, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because Noah Grubbs is like 6'4", 215, 220. He's just physically ready, right? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
ready. Maybe not the best athlete of the group, but like strong arm, gets through progressions well, seems like a smart kid. Brady Smigel, I think, has like some of the most natural throwing ability of anybody in
Yeah.
the class. I mean, he can uncork it and get spots that just not a lot of people can hit. I mean, honestly. Ryder Lyons is the dual threat dude that can hurt you with his arm or his legs. And
Mm-hmm.
then Brady Hart, Sean, I think Brady Hart has the most natural just touch and ability to layer the football of anybody that I've seen in the class so far. So, yeah, man, they're all different, but they're all extremely talented. Notre Dame would be lucky to have any of those players, in my opinion. And you could throw
Agreed.
Jared Curtis committed to Georgia. Obviously, he's not in the conversation anymore, but like Jared
That
Curtis is a
dude,
stud.
he's unfair.
Stud. Yeah. Oh,
If I saw him on my schedule in high school next year, I would pull a hamstring on purpose.
bro.
I,
He Sean,
I'm not playing this game.
Sean, I
No.
watched him. I watched him throw the ball 5 times, and I'm like, I don't need to see any more from this kid. I
That's
just don't need
it.
to see any more. I don't
That's
need to see
it.
it. I texted Brian, and I'm like, that's Matt Stafford reborn, man. Like that's Matt Stafford again. You
That,
remember when Matt
that
Stafford
is.
was like the number 1 player coming out of high school and ended up
Mm-hmm.
being the first overall pick, and now he's a Super Bowl championship quarterback that's thrown for 1,000,000 yards. Like that's Jared Curtis. That's literally who that is, in my opinion. And funny enough, he committed to Georgia. That was even before
Crazy.
he committed to Georgia. Like,
Yeah.
it's all right, cool. Like, yeah.
That was the
Never
best
mind.
pull. That might want to be one of Kirby's best pulls
Oh yeah,
in
yeah.
recruiting.
He's legit, man.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely legit. I think that kid's gonna be a star. But the point is that there's a lot of quarterbacks in this class that could be stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think Jared Curtis is the best one, but any of those next 4 that I talked about, if Notre Dame got any of those guys, I'm cool, man.
I'm
We're
cool
good to
with it.
go. We're good to go. And luckily, we're going to be able to talk to one of those guys next here, Sean. But before we do, folks, like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Make sure you're signed up at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll also have a live show on Saturday if Anthony Sacca chooses Notre Dame over finalists Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke. So make sure to be subscribed to all of those channels. But we'll talk to you on a nice little exclusive interview here next on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. All right, Sean. So for some context here, okay? Some context. We did this about, what was this, like a week and a half ago, somewhere in that ballpark, right? We interviewed 2026 Cocoa, Florida high school quarterback Brady Hart live on the channel. Okay. We're about to play the interview. Yes, this is pre-recorded. Deal with it if you don't like pre-recorded stuff. But this was me and Sean's conversation with Brady Hart. We hope you all enjoy it because me and Sean certainly did. So without further ado, one of the top quarterbacks on the board for Notre Dame in the 2026 class, this is Brady Hart. Irish Breakdown podcast. Of course, we're getting hot and heavy into the 2026 recruiting class. We've already, we just had the pot of gold offer list where we showed you guys about 120 players that were offered by Notre Dame recently.
Yeah.
Talking to a young man that has had his offer for some time now, Mr. Brady Hart, who's a star quarterback out of Cocoa High School in the state of Florida. Brady is kind enough to join us today. Brady, I know it's been super busy this offseason.
Yeah.
You're working out, 7-on-7 game, obviously the recruiting role and everything, man. Thank you so much for joining the show. How's everything going for you?
Yeah, everything's been great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, Brady, I think that a great way to start is just a general one, right?
Yeah.
Off season, like I said, it is obviously I know you're balancing being a student, obviously still getting ready for spring break next week. Also, obviously training with the team, being the best version of yourself, and then also handling the recruiting world. So how are you just handling everything, I guess, balancing everything that comes with being such a high caliber football player and also still being a student athlete?
Yeah, the whole thing is just schoolwork comes first. Just being like managing your time good. If you manage your time good, and you have a lot more time than you think if you manage it right. And getting my schoolwork done, and team first too. So focusing on my school, and then it's stuff with our school and our football team, and then recruiting will come next, and focusing on those visits and 7-on-7 and all the extra stuff.
Well, if I would love to ask Sean, because I know that you've seen his stats from last year. For people that aren't familiar with what Brady did as a sophomore, threw for over 3,600 yards, 41 touchdowns. Quite the season, man. So I guess my main question for you is, as a football player, we talked about a little bit of physical development that you're having this offseason as well, but just generally speaking, what are some things that you're focused on to take your game to an even higher level, if that is possible, from what we saw in 2022?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a ton of room to grow for me, especially I feel like I left a lot on the field last year, and so just putting on some weight and being bigger and stronger, and being able just working on a ton of pocket movement stuff, and making sure I have a bigger presence in the pocket, and working on my mental side a lot too, and learning some more coverages and how to attack those defenses and the whole deal. And it's been fun, and just working with coach. And so my coach Schneider, Ryan Schneider, my head coach at our school, he was the second all-time leading passer at UCF. So has a great knowledge of the game. So he helps a ton, and working with Balin Trujillo, my quarterback trainer, on footwork and mechanics and stuff. So everything's been good. And I think next year is going to be a big season.
Well, you mentioned Coach.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go double.
Just one follow up there, because you mentioned Coach Trujillo, and I've actually been following him for some time now, Brady. Yeah. He has tutored a lot of great quarterbacks. I know another guy that's on Notre Dame's radar is Noah Grubb, so I think pretty well for training with him. So can you talk about just, I guess, obviously playing under Coach Schneider, being focused on obviously everything with Coco, but what has Coach Trujillo specifically been able to really, I guess, extend to you as far as being a better version of yourself? Because obviously he's worked with a lot of great guys over the years.
Yeah. So Balin's great. I mean, when it comes to footwork and mechanics, and just teaching you how to be a leader and a good quarterback. And his main focus is his faith plays a huge part in how he coaches. And that's a big thing for me, is my faith. And we connect on that level. And it's great how he teaches us to be good men and be good football players. And that's a huge thing for me. And but yeah, Balin's taken my game to another level. I actually started training with him I think 2 years ago, when I was nothing, playing on JV. And he's worked with me and invested some time in me, and played a huge part in who I am today.
Brady, you talk about your workouts and getting better.
Yeah.
What is the one thing about Brady Hart that is the most natural? Like, you always say, I have to get better at this, but what do you feel is the one attribute that you can say, yo, this is what I was given naturally. I'm still working at it, but I'm pretty good at this, and I've been good at that from the time I started.
Yeah. So, I mean, so on the football side of it, I think it's anticipating throws and throwing from the pocket. And I mean, God blessed me with a gift to be able to I feel like I can anticipate throws very good. And I throw the ball before our receivers are open a lot of the time. And it allows our offense to be super hard to cover. And obviously our receivers we got some great receivers and a great scheme, but that definitely allows those plays to open up.
Do you feel go ahead? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But on the mental side of it, that's where you really separate yourself. And I think that no one will compete like me in the country. And I feel like I want to go into a loaded quarterback room and compete for the starting job. And I feel like when I get in that situation, that no one's going to beat me for the spot.
Wow, I love hearing that, because my next question actually was double R. He just threw me the alley-oop. Is he interviewing us? It's I was going to ask you, how attractive is the quarterback room at Notre Dame when you get a guy like Riley Leonard transferring in, Kenny Minchie, Steve Angeli, CJ Carr, Deuce Knight in the 25 class? That has to be very appealing. But I was going to ask you if it was kind of intimidating, but what you just said, you don't seem intimidated at all to have those type of guys in the room.
No, I think that the competition makes you better in every way. And if you're scared of the competition, then why would you be in the play the position that we play.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's well said, Brady. And Brady, I was curious because one of probably my favorite thing about you on film is that I feel like you really layer the football really well. And what I mean for that, for people out there that don't understand, like you throw with great touch to the intermediate deep, like you have a very good understanding of when to take something off a ball, when to throw with a little bit of touch, when to fit something in a tighter window. Where does that come from as far as I guess I'm curious about your sports background in general. Like, did you grow up playing multiple sports? Like, where does that trait, I guess, come from? Being able to just kind of understand where windows are, take something off, change arm speeds. I think that's probably my favorite thing about your game, honestly.
Yeah. So baseball player,
Okay.
in the
Makes
past.
sense. Yep.
And, yeah, so that definitely played a big piece in me being a quarterback and just different throws and creating. And, but yeah, I think it comes down to coaching. I'll give all the credit to Coach Schneider and Coach Trujillo because like them teaching me and how to understand the throw and not just get the ball there, but how to throw it there is definitely important. And they definitely instilled that in my game for sure.
Well, you mentioned at Coco, you have some dudes at wide receiver, and you certainly do. I think like Mr. Boggs in the 2025 class is a pretty dang good player. What's it like as a quarterback knowing that maybe I don't have to always be as perfect as I, on every single snap because guys like him are going to make me look good ultimately.
Yeah, our receiving core is unbelievable, and like, yeah, our receiving core this year is crazy. We have Javen Boggs. There's enough said about him. He goes and gets the ball, and when he catches it, he's going to score, and he's great after the catch and the whole deal. He's got the whole package. And then we got a couple of transfer receivers in this year. Kid named Zach Pillow, who's going to be great for us, and DL Hardison he previously was committed to Florida State, but yeah, he's going to be great for us too. And I mean, there's Nicky Teeter, and just when we got a whole set of receivers, and I'm excited to see what we can do this year.
Well, and I know we want to talk about obviously Notre Dame in this specifically, but I wanted to ask just generally about recruiting because I was just looking at your offer list, and I mean, it's expanding quickly, and it has over the last few months. I mean, you have Arkansas, Indiana, Iowa State, Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Purdue, Texas A&M, UCF, Virginia Tech. I mean, I just named basically just the Power 5 schools there on a really impressive list. What has it been like for you to navigate the recruiting process? Because it can get, I know, very stressful at times. You're talking about everyone wanting you to call them on Wednesday nights. Everybody wants you to come out to their school and visit. How have you been able to navigate what it can be a very chaotic recruiting process?
Yeah. So my dad, ex-professional athlete. So he went through the same recruiting process. He was a baseball player, but similar recruiting process. And it all comes down to time management. And you kind of have to narrow the list down, and it comes down to relationships too. My parents are great, and they're preparing me for all this, and they had me write a couple things down important to me about the school. So, and if the schools don't meet like my criteria of academics and development and being able to win a national championship and get to my goals, they're kind of not off the list, but kind of slid to the side. So we've kind of narrowed it down to where we have some schools that are a priority, and and just pursuing those relationships with those coaches. And I enjoy it a lot, getting to meet new people every day. And yeah, it's been fun.
Just hearing you talk about your faith, your parents, their background, your coaches, it seems like one of the things that you have is confidence and preparation, because life comes at you fast, especially when you're a young man as talented as you are. But it seems like you've been given the resources and the mindset how to properly handle things. I think one of the things guys on the field that are facing you might get caught off guard with, I'll go ahead and let everybody know. Don't get it twisted. This man can throw the rock, but he can run too. Don't get it twisted.
Oh yeah, don't get it twisted.
I think a lot of people kind of like discredit you a little bit because you like to hang in the pocket, and they don't realize how athletic you really are and that you can do damage with your legs as well. Do you feel that way? Is it something that you feel like you really haven't unlocked it, and you will find the time and the perfect spot to unlock that gift?
So it wasn't that I haven't unlocked it. I wasn't allowed to run last year. So obviously we had an unbelievable team, unbelievable defense. I think it was the best team in Cocoa history. We finished 14th in the nation last year. We beat some really good teams, and the only thing that was going to stand in the way of us losing a state championship was injuries. And so Coach Schneider kind of put the brakes on me running. He's like, don't run if you don't have to. And especially like through the season, he's like, unless it's in the playoffs, like I don't want you running at all. So it made me a better passer this year, because when things weren't perfect, I had to make a play from the pocket instead of escaping and taking off. But next year you'll see a little bit more of mobility and some running next year. So
nice.
Well, yeah. What's it like to play the schedule that you guys play? Because you just mentioned you're 14th in the country. You play a very high level in the state of Florida. I think the game I was watching last year that was just like, who the heck is this kid? A quarterback was the St. Thomas Aquinas game, I think, if I remember correctly. Like you had a great game in that one. What's it like, just Brady, playing against some of the best competition in the state of Florida, which is arguably the top states in the country as far as top level football?
The best state in the country in football.
Oh, you have to correct me there. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, it's exciting. It's going into those weeks when you're like, there's St. Thomas, their whole defense was committed Power 4 or Power 5, Power 4. So they had dudes all over the field, and it makes the week of practice just like exciting. We're all amped up in practice, and we know we have to play our best to win. And it keeps us laser focused during the week, and it's exciting to play those games. And our schedule is going to be tougher than it was last year, and our schedule was the toughest in the state last year. We had the hardest strength of schedule in the state, and we're going to schedule even tougher than we did last year. And I can't wait. Those big time games. We usually play them earlier in the season because we have our district play later in the season. But yeah, I can't wait. I'm like itching thinking about it right now.
Hey, Double R, I have to ask him this now.
Yeah.
We're both athletes, but we're probably a ton less athletic than the guys you play with. So just
couple tiers down.
Yes, couple tiers down.
Yeah.
So just play along with us. You're making our dreams come true, playing with you. So let's just say we're in the huddle together.
Yeah.
What's Brady Hart's go-to play? What's the call that you love to hear come in from the sideline? What's that one call where you get super excited when you hear it?
So I like a ton of different plays, but I think I'm going to go with levels.
Okay.
Post dig on the left, come back shallow on the right. Running back on an option route out of the backfield if he's not in protection. And just high low the mic, safety comes down, you're throwing the post ball, the safety backs up, you're throwing the dig or the shallow. And that's
he's double R.
My play.
He's big play hunting, baby.
Man.
He's reading top down.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Brady, I wanted to ask because we've talked obviously a lot about what you've been doing just individually to improve your game, and then obviously getting ready for a great season that you were just talking about there. The hardest schedule in all of high school football in the state of Florida. Let me ask you on the recruiting side of things. I know you have a visit scheduled to go up to South Bend April 3rd. Like, where else will you be this offseason as of right now? Like, what other schools are you going to be checking out?
Yeah, so I'll be at LSU this weekend.
Okay.
I was at Penn State last Thursday, Friday.
Nice.
I was at UCF the week before that. I'll be at Miami, North Carolina. Where else? I'm trying to remember. I think that's for the most part. That's it.
Nice. This is a really stupid question that a lot of Notre Dame fans are going to ask because they're going to hear Florida quarterback, right? The cold, does that bother you at all? Maybe going up to South Bend, Indiana, potentially?
I don't like the cold by any means, but you got to make it. Oh, and Florida State. I'm going to Florida State too.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the cold, I don't like the cold at all, but make sacrifices to get you to your goals. And I think that if it comes down to playing in the cold to get me to my goal to play in the NFL and win a national championship, I feel like that's a sacrifice that's super easy to make.
Yeah. And see, don't worry. They only put you in the cold maybe 1 or 2 games. They take you to California in November every year. So you're
exactly.
Good. You're good.
Exactly. And what happens when you get drafted by the Buffalo Bills, right? You're going to have to play in the cold anyways, right?
That's a good point.
True.
Good point. True. Absolutely. So I see the Peloton back there, Double R. He told us before we started, we were just chatting it up, that he's put on some muscle. He's put on a little bit of muscle. Don't believe the weight that's out there on these different websites.
Come on now.
So what have you been snacking on while you've been doing your working out and lifting? What's your because I know off season snacking is different.
This is a good question. This is a good question. So I've been on a meal program.
Okay.
So I'm eating like 6 meals a day. Got a fast metabolism. So like if I don't get my meals in, I'm losing weight. And but it's great because I'm eating clean. I'm eating a lot of like obviously chicken and rice, easy. Making a bunch of chicken and rice. Got my meals prepped for the week, and I like some pizza. I've been having a bunch of pizza lately. Pizza, and down in Florida we got a lot of fish too. So
the best.
I love the
freshest
fish too,
and the best. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So go catch some fish, and I like some fresh fish too.
Sean, I'm a little jealous, man. I remember when I had a fast metabolism, and
we both of us, my brother, both of us. That's why we're living vicariously through him. When I asked him about the huddle question, gosh. I was. By the way, you run the little dig, I'll run the post.
Okay, all right.
I'll run the post. Yeah,
there you go.
You got the speed to open it up. Apparently, I don't know. Yeah. Brady, I wanted to ask about, because I know that Gino Guidugli and Notre Dame obviously got down to see you during the open period. Just what is, from their perspective, what has been their pitch to you as far as how you potentially fit with the class? And ultimately, what is your impression of them right now? Like, what do you feel about Notre Dame as of today?
Yeah, I love Notre Dame. I mean, I love that staff. And it's everything everything I'm looking for. And I'm excited to get on campus, and recruiting's far from over, and definitely got a lot to see before I make a decision. But I like Notre Dame a lot, and my relationship with Gino is great, and that staff. And we've had some real good conversation about how they're going to develop me, and I'm excited to continue this process and get up there.
You want to let us in? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess a follow-up would just be generally, because I don't think I've ever asked you this yet, but is there a time frame that you would like to make a decision? Like, is that before this season, before next season? Like, is there any time frame that you are trying to stick to potentially?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going back and forth. Like,
okay.
I wanted to – actually, it's like I still feel like I'm pretty set on trying to commit before the season.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of committing during the season because I feel like it's a distraction, and I don't want to take the attention off the team, and like sure. I don't want that spotlight during the season. And I think before the season or after the season, but yeah, definitely this year.
I'm excited to know, are you ready to be the face of a recruiting class? Because everyone knows once the quarterback is in place, he's that guy. He's spearheading recruiting. He's going out. He's talking to everybody, making sure, taking multiple visits. Are you ready to be that guy for whatever school you decide to go to?
That's the biggest thing why I want to be an early commit. Building that class is huge, and pulling that class together, the guys you're going to play with, is everything. And you can't do it by yourself.
No.
That's not how it works. And you need the big guys up front. You need a defense, and you need receivers, and you need to go out and work hard and build that class. And I feel like the guys that commit late lose out on that opportunity to build the class. And
sure.
I'm excited to work to wherever I decide to go is build that recruiting class around me.
Yeah. Did you hear what he said first, Double R? Yeah, we get that in Groves every year. Big guys up front.
Get them up there.
Check. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, Brady, I would say my last question is, and you mentioned this already, you talked about you and your parents sitting down and you made like a criteria list of things that you really want in a school. You went a little bit into that, but I would just ask, because whenever you make those lists, there's a couple things that are most important, right? Like non-negotiables. For you, when I say wherever you end up ultimately deciding to go, what are a couple things that a school needs to have? Like it is a non-negotiable for you.
So the biggest thing for me is winning a national championship above all else. Like that's the biggest thing for me. But that kind of goes hand in hand with development too. I want to play at the next level. That's my goal. And I would like to win a national championship along the way too. So development and going to a place where where we're in a position to win a national championship every single year. And then the culture of the program. I want to be around guys I like. I don't want to be around a bunch of guys that I don't connect with and don't like. And I want to have that brotherhood of the team. And I think that's going to play a huge piece, or those three are going to play the biggest pieces in where I decide to go.
Love it. Love it. I think that's a great way to end us again. Brady Hart, quarterback, Cocoa High School in the state of Florida, star quarterback in the 2026 recruiting class. Brady, I know we live in the world of NIL in that era moving forward. So if you want to just quickly just throw out your social media handles and everything that everybody can follow you at.
Awesome. So Instagram is at Brady Hart _13. And then Twitter is Brady Hart QB.
There you go. Brady Hart. Thank you so much for joining the show, my man. Appreciate you
awesome.
So much.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, folks, that is Brady Hart, quarterback in the 2026 recruiting class, one of Notre Dame's top targets on the board. Bringing back Sean Davis for some closing thoughts as we get closer to the end of the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, it was a great conversation, obviously. Couple key takeaways or final thoughts on Brady Hart before we get out of the show today.
Very impressive young man, very thoughtful, knows what he wants from the schools that are offering him and that he ultimately chooses. And I love when he talked about his competitiveness, and he wants there to be a high-level quarterback room at the place he chooses. He's looking forward to that, and he's coming in expecting to win the competition. You love to hear that from a kid. He's just a really, really impressive young man to have a conversation with, and I came away thoroughly impressed with him as a human being, a young man, and as a football player as well.
Sean, I always love when I tell the kids like, hey, 10 or 15 minutes, and then you look up and it's 20 something because they're so well spoken and it's such a good conversation. You know what I mean? So Brady Hart, hope you guys enjoyed that interview. He's going to be visiting on Wednesday, April 3rd, this coming week. So on next week's Notre Dame Recruiting Hour, we'll definitely be talking about recapping that visit and how everything went. Thank you all so much again, though, for joining the show today here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Before you leave, please hit that like button for us, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. If you listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews, and make sure you're subscribed over there. We will be having a show on Saturday if 2025 linebacker Anthony Sacca commits to the University of Notre Dame. Make sure you stay tuned in case he chooses them over Ohio State, Alabama, Wisconsin, and Duke. Thank you all for joining the show today. See you guys next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast.